simply say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." We are living in a day that the eyes of many spiritual leaders have grown dim. Eli was a prophet in his day that heard from God. Unfortunately, Eli had sons that did not serve God. They actually were stealing from the church, sleeping with girls, doing crazy stuff. And Eli did not correct them. And so what happened is that God now said, I'm going to find someone. The Bible said that there's a young man named Samuel. I don't have the time for the backstory, but Hannah gave birth to this miracle child, and she dedicated him to the Lord. Brought him, and he is now growing up in the house of God. And here's a simple word for some of you. You may not be able to hear God's voice initially, but you need to position yourself in the right place. It says that he was in the house of God. I got a word for some parents here. Maybe your kids aren't really serving God. Maybe, they're not where they should be. But I'm here to tell you, you cannot come to church on a weekend and not be affected by the Spirit of God. Listen to me. If you can't hear God's voice, at least find a place where God's voice is speaking. And that's why I want to encourage you. Some of you are not really hearing God's voice necessarily, but you decided to show up, come out to the place. And it says that he was lying down in that place, and notice what God did. God came to Samuel and spoke to him. Isn't it interesting that now what does Samuel do? Samuel goes to Eli and says, "You called me." Isn't it interesting that a lot of times God's voice will come through your pastor, will come through your spiritual leader? Because his voice, God's voice, sounded like Eli's voice. Please do not minimize the impact of spiritual leadership in your life. Please do not minimize that God is actually speaking right now through me. Come on, with my, what are these called, Bella? With my Crocs on. And what happens is that sometimes you need to listen to my voice. And then pretty soon, it's not my voice speaking to you. Man, that's God speaking to me. And what happens is if you just stay in the place long enough, and I'm hearing this from the Lord right now, is that there's an enemy, and what the enemy wants to do is distract you, and he wants to pull you away. But I'm here to tell you, if you show up every morning, I don't care what your body says, I don't care what anybody else says, you show up and you said, "Nope, I'm going to the house of God, and I know that God's going to speak to me today." you.